All right, welcome everybody. Let's call the meeting to order. One change up to the membership for today. Sheriff Lopez indicated earlier that Captain Davis will be representing the Sheriff's Department today. So, Madam Clerk, with that, can we please have a roll call of the membership?
Yeah. Member Evans,
Here.
Member Johnson.
I believe that'll be
Yeah.
Captain Davis.
Captain Davis, sorry.
I'm here.
Member Larson. Here. Member Lewis. Looks like he's absent. Member Miller. Looks like he's absent as well. Member Nigel.
Here.
Member Olson.
Here.
Member Raven.
Here.
Member Saylor.
Here.
Member Valdez.
Present.
Thank you. Member Vega. Looks like she's absent. Member Fruitnick.
Here.
And is Member Provenza here? Looks like he's absent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Quick housekeeping. Assembly Bill 361 authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. Members of the public are encouraged to observe and participate in the teleconference. If you are joining the meeting via Zoom and wish to make a comment on an item, press the raise hand button. If you are joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to make a comment and you'll be called upon. With that being said, it brings us to agenda item number 2, consider approval of the agenda. If there's any changes or concerns, please let me know. If not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Make that motion.
All right, first by
I'll
Tracy
second.
and second by Karen. Can we get a vote, please?
Member
Go for it.
Evans.
Aye.
Member Davis.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Miller. Also absent. Member Nigel.
Aye.
Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Raven.
Aye.
Member Saylor.
Aye.
Member Valdez.
Aye.
And Member Vega is absent. Okay, thank you.
Brings us to number 3, consider approval of the August 9th special meeting minutes. They are attached in the packet. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to take a look at them. But we can take a moment, and if you have any questions or changes or concerns, please let us know.
This is Karen. I'll move to approve.
All right, we've got a first by Karen. Is there a second?
Second from Raven.
Okay, I think Jonathan jumped in first, second by Jonathan. Lapita, can we get a vote, please, to approve the special meeting minutes?
Member Evans.
Aye.
Member Davis.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Miller is also absent. Member Nigel.
Abstain.
Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Raven.
Aye.
Member Saylor.
Aye.
Member Valdez.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-1.
Lapita, I
Oh, I'm
vote
sorry.
vote to
Member
approve as
Fruitnick,
well.
Apart.
And then
Apologies.
did we get Captain Davis in there too, or did I miss that? We did?
No, we did get him. Apologies, Chief.
Okay, sorry.
The vote is
I
against.
missed it. I apologize. All right, brings us to agenda item number 4, opportunity for members of the public to address the CCP on subjects relating to CCP business and are not otherwise on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you. Brings us to number 5, member announcements. I'm not sure if anybody has any announcements, but if you do, let us know.
I have just a small one. For those of you who were at the special meeting we had in September, we talked about forming some smaller work groups with representatives from each of your departments. And so we're getting ready to schedule some of those with Kevin O'Connell to kind of dig into some of the data that we've been discussing and make some additional plans within each of the intercepts. And so you should be expecting an email probably from Kevin asking for who you'd like to represent your department in those work groups with a little more context and detail, but I just wanted to give you a heads up to keep an eye out for an email from Kevin O'Connell.
Perfect, thank you. Others? Scanning the boxes, I don't see anybody. All right, brings us to agenda item number 6. Receive an update on the diversionary housing project. I have a few notes here just to kind of bring us all back. It's been a while since we discussed it, so just a kind of an update. The diversionary housing project was designed to meet the strategic goals and the plan of the CCP to create additional housing and expand access to treatment for clients. We did receive a $1 million community services infrastructure grant to buy and renovate and furnish a house in Woodland and West Sacramento. Houses to be operated the same as the IGT house, probation supervising, HHSA treatment, CCP paying for ongoing property management. Eligible client participants will be mental health court and AIC clients. The original plan was to have the MHSA house in West Sacramento be repurposed for the diversionary housing project. We did some renovations. We did handed out flyers to some of the neighbors for an open house. There was an overwhelming negative response to putting clients in that house, actually a threatening type of behavior. So it's felt that moving forward with that house for our clients is not appropriate. We also we found a potential house here in Woodland. Some of the issues with that house and just finding the house suitable, we need it large enough to accommodate 5 adults, 1 story, proximity to public transportation and services, Mello-Roos costs that we wouldn't have any, so we wouldn't have those additional ongoing costs. And it's a very hot housing market right now. Additionally, escrow period must be long enough to include board meetings to get the final approval. We did some outreach on a house here in Woodland. We hand delivered 60 flyers to the surrounding residents. There was some residents that were okay with the project, but numerous ones that were not. We went to the Board of Supervisors, and the desire is to have a more robust outreach process with a little bit more transparency and more of a formalized outreach process. So that's kind of where we're at. The grant, the governor has extended it till the end of 2025. Sorry, till 6/30/2025. So the end of the fiscal year in 2025. And so we do have some time, and I'm, bringing up the conversation to the CCP to find out kind of where we might go from here. Trying to figure out a process that would work for the short time frames, but also for everybody involved for an outreach. And so I just kind of turn it over to the CCP to have a quick discussion and get some ideas on where we proceed from here. With that, I'll turn it over to the group.
This is Karen. I'll just jump in. So we've had that house in West Sacramento since 2008. We bought it with MHSA dollars, and we're obligated to continue to provide services for folks living with mental illness in that home for 20 years. In light of some of the threatening comments made by the neighbors, we actually are examining whether or not to sell that home and purchase another one for this purpose, because we feel like placing clients in that home at this point would not be safe for them. So I think, we as a county are in a very uncomfortable position because everybody wants us to solve homelessness and ensure the stability of our folks in the criminal justice system. And it's very hard to do that without also having a place for them to live. And so I'm happy to help with any outreach for future settings. I'm not especially hopeful that we're going to be able to meet the community and board's wishes in terms of this matter. I suspect we'll be giving the money back to the state if my estimation of what I heard at the board meeting and from the community members is any indication of where we're headed.
I have a question about the house in West Sacramento. Are the threats based on what I'm assuming neighbors experienced from prior clients? Or I don't understand what
The neighbors literally didn't know that we even had clients housed there. They did say the yard was a little like not mowed sometimes. But I think it had everything to do with this proposal to have folks from mental health court and or addiction intervention court housed in that home.
do you think that, because I know when we did the IGT house, the neighbors were worried. In their minds, they thought we were literally picking up someone in the midst of their worst day and putting them in the house and calling it over. When in reality, we were putting people in that house that had successfully completed some level of treatment and were simply continuing on their journey. Do you think that if the neighbors had more information about who's chosen to go in there, because the mental health court and AIC people are being successful. I mean, there's a ton of supervision. Anyway, my question is, do you think with more education, we could solve this?
I don't think so in that location. I think in other locations, potentially we could do that with a more robust outreach program and explaining the process and having various members of the CCP there to assist. There's a possibility for that location. I don't see it happening.
For that location, Dan, you're referring to the Coloma Street in Woodland, or you're referring?
Sorry, no, the West Sacramento
I see.
address. The Coloma Street address is out of essence. That's not a possibility for moving forward at this point, that house. But the West Sacramento house that previously to this had clients in the house. And I don't know, Ian, you were there. I don't know if you feel comfortable chiming in. I was not, but from what I've heard, from my staff and others that were there, just the level of threats to our clients, if we put them there, is just not acceptable to risk it.
Yeah, and Tracy, to your question and point, we tried to have that conversation there and share the fact that, not only having mental health consumers there since 2008, but the program we're talking about here would potentially have even more robust services and oversight from probation than previously, the clients were getting there. And I think maybe for a few residents, they heard that message, but for the majority of it, it was, that message wasn't heard. And there was a lot of really concerning kind of messages to Dan and Karen's point that it feels unsafe to put our clients in that location moving forward. Really unfortunate.
So in 2008, did we just buy the property and put the clients in there without really socializing it with the neighbors? Is that what happened? Karen, or?
I wasn't here in 2008, so I'm not sure how it happened. I suspect it was much like the Buckeye House that we bought with IGT funds. But it sounds as though the board's preference is for us to, from here forward, bring these purchases through a more public community stakeholder process before we purchase properties. And
How did we do it with Buckeye
we just bought it.
and put people in it?
Yeah.
There
I mean,
was-
we did a community meeting at the house right before, but I think we were already in escrow.
So it was like, we're doing this and we want to work with you, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
The
And
Housing Authority was, Lisa Baker led one of the community outreach groups. And I remember being at the house and talking to neighbors.
so Karen, your expertise here, what do you think is the likelihood that we're going to be able to get a house for these folks in need following the board's direction? And, is there any chance that we can do that with what the board is asking us to do, or is it just a losing proposition? And my next question is, did the board, other than just direct you guys how to do it, did they have any suggestions? Because it sounds like it's a pretty steep uphill battle.
Haven't, in my experience here at Health and Human Services, ever found a neighborhood that's willing to accept this type of a population, or formerly, there's generally a lot of pretty negative community feedback about having these folks come into my neighborhood. And so that's my concern. I think, sure, if we had a house in the middle of a field that was far away from everybody else, we wouldn't have any problem at all. But that's not really, we're trying to acclimate these folks back into the community to become successful members of society. So
What's sad is that with the Buckeye House, so SCOE had sent people from the DRC to do yard work. We fixed fences, like good neighbor fences. We contributed, when I say we, the county contributed towards the neighborhood in a really positive way. And the neighbors, once they met who their neighbor was, were fine. There were no problems. There are no problems. So I don't know. I like the way we did IGT, and it worked, I guess, since 2008 up until last, couple months ago, to have the same population in West Sacramento. Supervisor Saylor, what do you help us?
Well, I think we're facing a Scylla and Charybdis kind of a dilemma. And one of the challenges is that when you're in the market to purchase property, you don't have an infinite amount of time to sort out community interests and give people advance notice and everything. You're trying to buy a property in the open market. The county does have a community engagement policy framework that was adopted a couple of years ago, and I think referring to that would be helpful. I know the board will be interested in seeing how that might play out. How that might play out in future such considerations. State law, I think, is pretty explicit on what can be done, and it doesn't really give neighborhoods the kind of veto that we have chosen to at a local policy level. So I think that's another part of the conundrum that we've got. I think if we were, Karen's reference to building something or buying something that has very little surrounding it is actually not a throwaway comment. I think when it comes down to it, the only way that it's even when we were doing something in Woodland about a year ago with a vacant county-owned property in an area that has had very little conversation about development options, we faced quite a bit of pushback from the community. So I think even those are challenging. One of the key messages that I think is important, and that is in my mind at least, is that we're not talking about importing people from Arkansas or somewhere far away. We are talking about the people who grew up here, live here, are part of our communities already. And I think most of the prevailing wisdom is that they ought to be given a chance to rebuild their lives and become productive members of their communities. But that being said, it's difficult for one neighbor to say, "Oh, I'll take on the whatever perception or reality that risk or the downside and take one for the community. I think that's a tough one.
What about units in an apartment complex? That may be totally far out there. Karen, I don't know, or Ian, if that's even, is that a crazy suggestion or is that possibility?
But Jonathan, I would just comment if I could. That might be a good approach if but even there we'll see pushback from near neighbors, and it sometimes doesn't take a whole lot of folks to oppose. In the Pacifico situation, we had we've got a very good proposal now, and it's got a lot of possibilities. But we've had others there, and we've got just one or two very active folks in that neighborhood who have been persistent in their opposition, even though I think most people would not believe that's a fair assessment of the potential issues.
So we've talked a lot about that situation over here, and since I'm very involved in the mental health court and addiction intervention court, and one of our deputies was actually over in West Sac and told me how that went. And it was very challenging, like you all are saying. I know, and this is kind of what Supervisor Saylor was saying, and I agree. I totally understand the fact that we want to integrate them into the community, this population, but I'm feeling like we can go that route and have nothing. And I'm thinking about, like the farmhouse where we have multiple participants from mental health court. They do great out there and they love it, and it's kind of removed from the community. So you don't get that integration, but there's also a positive aspect to that. And that may be, like Supervisor Saylor said, not off the table. I think that may be a good route to go, partly because it may be our only option, and that's kind of sad, but it just is what it is.
Yeah, I think that might be where we've had other sick situations. We've got Pine Tree Gardens where some of the neighbors don't know it's even there, even though it's been there for decades. But yeah, I think really, if the group were to come back to the Board of Supervisors with a sort of a framework, maybe without a specific project in mind, but here's how we would approach this topic, that might be a way to get at it. That here's how we would identify possible spots and what kind of community engagement would be appropriate for this situation, and then without even a proposal in mind.
Don, can I ask you a question, Don? As a supervisor, I'm getting the feeling that the board wouldn't really care that much if it was off the beaten track in the country, so long as the recommendation to do that from Karen and Ian and all the experts came from them. It sounds like if that's what we thought was the best way to go, in light of the fact that we can't get something in the city, I'm guessing they would be fine with that. Their main issue is, the socialization to the neighbors. But if there aren't neighbors, it doesn't sound like they'd have a big problem with that. Is that a fair assessment, Don?
Well, there's always a sensitive receptor of some kind. And it may be, if it's just a single farmhouse that's a mile away, there still could be somebody who comes forward and saying, why am I being obligated? But generally speaking, I think that might be something worth trying. I think that it's the political stuff of elected representatives responding to the concerns of their constituents is playing itself out. So I think I think it's worth a try to look at an inventory of spaces. The thing is, with the Coloma house, it came forward and it was just one house, and you had to respond to what the market offered, and it was available. So I think that was clear enough why our team did that. But the problem was then we were dealing with either that house or nothing, and we didn't have it was hard for the board to say that of all the possible places in the county, this was the place that it would go, and that's what we were going to have to do. And I think having some kind of a policy framework that is worked through identifying some spaces, maybe places the county owns, maybe a motel that's being repurposed. Something that can be less of an impact on, or I guess I want to say less of a perceived impact, because I don't know that it's that the neighbor concerns are as they feel them, but I don't know that they are that real. We have so often, once you put one of these things in, whatever it is, 12 months later, nobody even remembers that there was a controversy. And so I think that's a common deal.
So this is a comment maybe for Karen and Ian probably knows this pretty well, because, you know, in terms of really knowing the population, which I do for mental health court, you know, I would say, you know, some of them might not even be ready to be in the community. And I say, you know, in Woodland, in a town, especially the ones that are from there, you know, where there might be people close by that are bad influences. And so for me, when I think about, you know, mental health court or addiction intervention court, I feel with quite a few of the participants, they actually would be better off in the country. And then maybe later on, or maybe when they're off probation, you know, you step down and move them into the community. Maybe the apartment's over, you know, by HHSA, because we have a lot of people from our programs in those apartments. But I like, if you were to ask me, and again, I know the population, but I'm certainly not an expert like Karen and Ian are, but I don't even know that that's the best place for a fair amount of the population in our mental health court to be in the community, even though I know that that's kind of the prevailing way to integrate them. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of different housing options throughout this conversation. And I think for me, that's what it's all about, is, you know, building a housing continuum for the population. And so looking at different levels of care when they're ready. You know, you mentioned farmhouse, Jonathan. You know, that's a lot of our folks off house are starting a residential substance use program, and then having those transition options to a lower level of care. We do have folks in the permanent supportive housing, you know, projects, and a couple folks in individual housing or individual apartments. And so I think the hope when we got this grant was that this would be adding, you know, a option to our housing continuum for the criminal justice, behavioral health folks, mental health court, AIC. You know, at the time we had steps to success. So that was kind of thought of maybe an option for this housing opportunity. And you know, I'm hopeful moving forward that we can continue looking for options. I think, you know, the potential motels for sale that are on the smaller side that might fit this, you know, this cost range could work. I know I'm not a realtor, but doing some housing searches in Yolo County of this kind of out in the middle of nowhere, you know, having no neighbors and being still a 4 or 5 bedroom place. There are some opportunities out there, but they're in the, you know, $1.5 to $2 million range. And so we kind of don't have that type of money to play with currently with this grant opportunity. But I think it's good feedback for future opportunities, and maybe we look to leverage, you know, other opportunities coming from the state with the behavioral health housing money that's, you know, hopefully coming to fruition soon, and keep exploring this. I hadn't heard that the grant got pushed out to 2025. So I think that gives us more time to explore and dig in, which is good.
I wish there was a way to destigmatize, because even this group right here is referring to these folks, forgetting sometimes that they're neighbors and fathers and brothers, and they went to high school here and they work here sometimes, and they're struggling with stuff.
That's one of the thoughts I had when I first heard about this. Just, and as you can probably hear, I'm so frustrated with this, but I know everyone else is. And I know we're working our hardest on this, but I was thinking just kind of off the cuff, like a PR campaign in whatever city. I mean, it would have to be in the whole city of Woodland because you never know where you're going to find that piece of property when it's available. Talking about the successes of Mental Health Court and Buckeye House and all those different things. But the problem, and that would cost money. And then, how do you get that message out? Because everyone, is so focused on their own media outlet. I mean, obviously, you can do some forced PR work on Facebook if you pay for it, but it's so challenging. But I think you're right, Tracy. Like, how do we, reduce that stigma? That's a good point.
I'll turn it over for public comment right now if there is public comment on this agenda item.
Yes, Executive Director.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Allison Olson from Namiolo County. We would love to help with any marketing or a community outreach that might be available once it is available with the Board of Supervisors or through county programs or HHSA. This is right up our alley, and we are very excited to help support any sort of diversionary housing program and helping to educate the community on the importance of this for our county. So please remember to include us in any sort of help that you might need, because we are ready and willing.
Thank you. Lupita, is there additional public comment?
There are no additional hands raised, Chair.
Okay. What I'm sensing from the group is we don't want to stop this at this point. We want to continue potentially finding a landing spot for a project. I like, I forget if it was Jonathan's or Tracy's comments about kind of a PR campaign. And obviously there is money costs associated with it, but we do have innovation fund money or some other pots of money here and there that maybe if the group wanted to go that route in the future, we could figure out what that would look like. And so I'm thinking at this point, it'll definitely be an agenda item for our next quarterly, which will be in January. Unless someone else has a better idea, we'll kind of go that route.
Chief
Dan?
Prutnick?
Oh, yes, sorry to see your hand, Laura, go ahead.
It's okay. I wanted to also mention, in the past, I had the opportunity to go to other counties and see where they had turned public buildings such as old hospitals or old clinics or old shopping malls into housing or service centers. And that may also be an idea. I don't think we should get, thinking of just a house. Even an old business of some sort may work out to be able to work out for this project.
Supervisor Saylor.
I think Laura's making a good point that looking at alternative kinds of spaces would be wise. I want to just emphasize again that having the policy discussion without a specific project on the table would be wise. I think that would help to set the stage. And a second piece is that I don't know that how clear it was to everyone in the recent discussion that this was a CCP collective approach. I think unfortunately, Dan, I think you and your team were advocating against a heavy wind. You didn't have a lot of folks beside you as you're doing that. So I think making it clear that this is a CCP initiative would be helpful. I think making sure that if it does come forward that the supervisor who represents the district that the project is in is up to speed on it and at the earliest possible stages would be good. So those are a couple of things, and then taking a look at that community engagement piece. But at some point, we've got to do some of this some of this programming. It just, I think Ian's point about a continuum is really solid. And I think NAMI, Allison makes a good point that having community advocates know that and be part of the process early on is also a very positive thing. I sense the frustration that you're all expressing, and I share it, and hope that we do a reboot, that this doesn't go away.
Jonathan?
Yeah, so one comment and then a question. I want to first really give a shout out to those people from Health and Human Services and Probation that were out, and Preston from our office that were out there at these houses. Because man, from what I heard, that was a real challenge and it's kind of scary. So thank you guys for doing that. Karen and Ian, just I know this is more project-based and not what Don was talking about, but I just have a question. My understanding is that Walter's house is going to be moving across town. I'm just kind of curious. Not that necessarily this would be a good housing for what we're talking about, but I'm just kind of curious. Is there a timeline for that when Walter's house will be out? And is there someone behind them that's going to move in or not? Do we not know?
I think the plan, Ian can speak to the timeline, but my understanding of the plan for the repurposing of that building is for more of a family transitional. I think Woodland has been very clear that they don't want formerly homeless or single males living at that facility near the middle of town, that they would prefer to have it be families.
Go ahead, I'm
Timing
sorry.
wise, the Walters House move out to East Beamer Way is the third phase of the project after the 60 permanent supportive housing units. And so I know phase 2 is hopefully going to be complete before the end of second quarter next year. So before June of 2022. And they're anticipating the new Walters House, which will go to 60 beds. The current one's 44 beds, being completed before the end of the calendar year.
Thanks.
All right, well, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Consider approval of revised CCP bylaws. Eric?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Eric Will, CCP analyst, and I'm here with a return of the amended CCP bylaws based on our prior discussion. So back in August on the 9th, the CCP held a discussion regarding the bylaws, and there was a robust discussion around some of the language that was being used, as well as some very good recommendations and suggestions for staff to consider. So very quickly today, just a brief update on this, and then there will be an opportunity for any additional comments or questions regarding these bylaws. But I wanted to just quickly review the changes that were made from the previous meeting to today's meeting. And so there was some changes in language where there might have been some awkward language previously, and we provided some clarity, I think, in terms of revising some of the language to be more clear about what we are specifically referencing, some revisions to language to be more clear about our rollover processes or carry forward processes that we've now included to be in alignment with DFS. So thank you, DFS, for those changes. We've made some changes to the treatment and innovation definitions. So bolstering those definitions from the last time that this group saw them per the guidance of this group. So including additional information around outcome and metrics, making sure that we are bolstering all of the document language with the CCP's 3 primary goals from the strategic plan. And then we've also returned the language regarding the outcomes and metrics. So I know that there was just a little bit of discussion about some confusion about the 2 versions that we had previously. So just to restate this for everyone, we are not taking out outcomes and metrics for the CCP's budget policies. We actually anticipate there to be an even more robust section moving forward, which will actually be another item in the CCP agenda today relating to the budget ad hoc that the CCP would be seeking to form. So with those things in mind, I just wanted to open it up for any questions that folks had regarding the language in the CCP bylaws as would be amended today, or if there were any further comments or suggestions for revisions.
With that, we'll open it up to the group. Jonathan, I'm not sure if you have a questions or if the hand's just up from the last one.
Both actually, thanks.
Oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of looking at innovation, and I have a couple of comments. So number one, in all these programs, we don't use the word clients because they're not really clients, they're participants. So that really should be changed, and that's, you know, in all the protocol for AIC and MHC and mental health diversion. But the other thing I want to add is, you know, in terms of labels and stigmatizing, I don't think and I don't know if this word is used throughout this document. I read it, but I'm just noticing it now, the word offenders. You know, I think we are moving away from using those sorts of labels. So my suggestion is you replace the word clients with participants, and you take out the phrase for offenders. I don't think it's needed, and I don't think we want to have words like offenders or defendants or parolees in this document, because we're trying to move away from those labels.
Others, anybody else?
No, I appreciate that, Jonathan. I think that's awesome. I just had a question. I don't really have any questions about the bylaws, but as we are going to be forming our ad hoc committee, we recognize, I think it was a 9 to 12 month timeline before we thought we'd have all our ducks in a row. I just want to leave here today knowing what's going to be expected of us through the next budget cycle, because I think we're supposed to meet again as early as summer and start hashing out next year's budget. So I just want to put that on the table, that we probably should be thinking about that. If not deciding it today, at least deciding it soon.
For sure. I'm scanning the boxes. I'm not seeing anybody else. Peter, we can open it up to public comment on this agenda item, if there is any.
I do not see any hands up.
Okay. Then I guess we need to make a motion. Do I have a motion to? Sounds like Jonathan has made a recommendation to change those verbiage. Jonathan, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve this new budget policy and just edit under the innovation definition, replace the word clients with participants, and after the word outcomes, put a period and take out the words for offenders.
Jonathan's made a motion. Is there a second?
Are we changing that language everywhere though? Because I think one of our goals is holding offenders accountable. So I'd like to change it throughout.
Throughout all.
So I'm looking to see if there's any other references in this document, and my suggestion is, you know, we do that separately. You know, I'll take a look at that separately and see if it makes sense. I mean, if it makes sense, I'm totally fine with it. But for now, I think we should just be focusing on this document, and I don't see any other words like that in this document unless I'm missing it. But that's something definitely worth discussing, Tracy.
It's just, yeah, it is in this document. It's under proposal review process, and it lists the 3 goals of CCP. Number 2 is hold offenders accountable.
Well, number 3 is build offender competency.
Yep.
It's in 2 of our 3 goals.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think the issue is those are our strategic plan goals. So I think to Jonathan's point, let's make this document clean. We can't change those goals within this document until we as a body agree to change those goals. So this document may need to be edited again once we change our strategic plan goals, if that's the will of the body.
You know, that I agree, and I think I want to walk this back just a moment, because when we use the word participant, it's, someone that's in a program, and not all these people will be in a program necessarily. So instead of the word participants, and I can restate it, but I don't know that they all will be participants. Maybe it's just the word individuals. We could even say individuals who are criminally justice involved if we want, unless that's implied here. But I don't know that the word participants, now that I look at it, is correct. So I guess I'll if I could restate the motion to approve the document, that first sentence should be an innovation definition, turning an idea into a solution that best serves individuals who are criminally justice involved and improves outcomes, period. And then, we can revisit the stuff Tracy was talking about down the road.
Is there a second for Jonathan's motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Lapita, can we do a vote, please?
Dan, can I actually interject real quick? I think this is a vote of the full CCP, even though it touches on a budget matter. The way the bylaws are set up, the full CCP votes on budget matters other than specific budget recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. It's a couple carve outs. I don't think this quite fits. So that's why I say I think it's full CCP, and just wanted to mention that before the voting starts.
Okay, then can we get a vote of the full membership of the CCP, please?
Yes, thank you, Phil. Member Evans,
Aye.
Member Davis.
Aye.
Member Larson,
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Miller is also absent. Member Nigel,
Aye.
Member Olson,
Aye.
Member Raven,
Aye.
Member Saylor,
Aye.
Member Valdez,
Aye.
and Member Vega is absent. Member Fruitnick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to agenda item number 8, receive update on amended state budget and consider amendment to CCP budget fiscal year 21-22. And Laura's going to actually present on this topic.
Good afternoon, Laura Liticote, CCP Fiscal Support, with an update to the fiscal year 21-22 CCP budget. At the end of September, the county received a letter from the state communicating that CCP growth for YOLO to receive during the current fiscal year is projected to be $3.95 million. The current CCP budget only includes $2.37 million in growth, so we're expecting almost an additional $1.6 million in one-time funding this year. For some context, historical CCP growth is typically within $300,000 to $400,000 a year. So again, an additional unprecedented amount. The timing of the letter did not allow for incorporation into the adopted budget and has not allowed staff to develop a full set of options to present to this body. At this time, staff would like to propose returning to the January CCP meeting with options for considerations. Any changes required to the CCP budget as a result of that presentation could easily be included with the mid-year monitor budget process, which gets taken up to the board in late February or early March. Options for consideration may include allocating this extra revenue out in the percentage-based budget model, meeting the reserve target, which you just approved, or utilizing additional one-time funding to mitigate a projected drop in growth for fiscal year 22-23. If there are other options the CCP would like staff to explore, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you. Open it up to the members for discussion or questions. Not seeing any.
Chief.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Laura, so this is one time, as you mentioned, we typically see like 300 to 400,000. What is there an expenditure deadline in this? Like, are we able to spread it over, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Absolutely. Based on the percentage-based budget model that the CCP approved earlier this fiscal year, we could easily book this to departmental fund balance. And then each department would carry forward their allocation as fund balance to be used in future years as each department sees fit.
Thanks, that's helpful. I think as we consider options, moving forward for the funding, I think it's helpful to think of potential one-time uses, but maybe also kind of spreading.
Absolutely. And I will present this in January, but the reserve is currently funded at 5%. And the budget policy just approved is for 10. So it's also an opportunity to essentially fully fund a reserve in the first year of that reserve's existence, which is a pretty amazing option.
Perfect. I'll open it up to public comment on this agenda item if there is any.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. So it sounds like the group's okay with bringing it back in January with options, and staff will present various options to the CCP. Not seeing
When you say staff, you mean probation?
Laura, yes,
Okay.
and working with Eric
Okay.
between the two to come up with hopefully 4 to 5 good options for us for the group to vote on and decide. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to number 9. Consider approval of CCP budget metrics and outcomes ad hoc. And Eric?
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Eric Will, CCP analyst. And so as referenced in the prior item, we today would be seeking to seek membership for and approve the ad hoc for the CCP budget metrics. And if we could bring the agenda up on the screen really quickly, Lupita. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Great. So as Tracy made a quick mention of a little bit earlier today, the anticipated duration of ad hoc efforts is 9 to 12 months, although the group could certainly change either the scope of duration as well as the description of scope that staff has put together for this item. The idea here is that, similar to how we approached the budget ad hoc last year, is to get a specific group ad hoc together to really tackle this item of how are we developing CCP budget policies that will implement effective and feasible. So what can we actually achieve, outcome measures and metrics. And so this would be working with the CCP analysts, working with CCP fiscal staff that were just funded as part of this budget to develop these procedures. I think similar to how the budget ad hoc worked in the last year, just with some differences in that we have this framework now together. This would be to build out this policy. Likely what that looks like is an amendment to the CCP bylaws to really provide additional robust language. At least this is how staff has understood this thus far. So today is an opportunity to have a brief discussion about this, any comments, suggestions, and then to elect a membership to this ad hoc committee. And with that, that concludes my brief presentation on the ad hoc. I'm here for any questions. The anticipated membership for this would have to be less than a quorum of the CCP. And I believe similar to the last time we put together an ad hoc, would be asking for perhaps 1 to 2 other CCP members who are not executive committee members to serve on this ad hoc.
Thank you, Eric. I'll open it up to the group for discussion.
Personally, I think we should get this done quicker. Like meet once a month for the next 3 months and just hammer it out, knowing that maybe we're going to change things as lessons are learned over time. Otherwise, I think that what's going to happen is in 9 to 12 months, no one will be tracking data. No one's going to have metrics in place. We're not going to be able to evaluate current programs. unless the group just understands that and is okay with that. But I'm not sure, do you think it's going to take 9 to 12 months to come up with some good processes?
I don't think it necessarily needs to. I think I was being conservative in my estimations for this group just based off our quarterly meeting schedule currently. However, we certainly could have special meetings and staff can work with the ad hoc on a more frequent basis to bring recommendations back.
Anybody else? All right, I'll open it up for public comment on this agenda item if there is any, Lupita.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
Okay, so it sounds like we would like to establish an ad hoc. At this point, I'll open it up to volunteers for recommendations for who would like to be a member of the ad hoc. Captain Davis?
I nominate Chief Miller since he's not here to decline.
Captain Davis, are you volunteering or are you?
No,
having comment?
the sheriff's office is interested in having our planning and research manager, Michelle Wolf, participate.
I would like to be on this as well, if that's acceptable to the group.
I'm happy to participate or volunteer, Ian.
All right, one or the other, sounds good. We need, what do we need? If my math's right, we need 3 more. We need 6, Eric, or am I wrong on that? 5, sorry.
So we can have no more than 3 executive committee members. And we could have, I believe, we could have more, I think, in terms of the overall membership, but not wanting to get the group to be too large. So I think last ad hoc was 5 members, if I remember correctly.
Okay, then with the sheriff, probation, and HHSA, there are 3 executive members on there.
I think I would like to clarify with county council regarding the sheriff's request in terms of if that were not to be a sheriff or his designee on the ad hoc, how does that qualify or not?
That's a very astute question, Eric. Yeah, ordinarily, members of an ad hoc have to be members of the body that created the ad hoc. I'll look at that. I mean, usually the question arises when a legislative body wants to put a member of the public on the ad hoc, and that's an easy no. I know the Brown Act doesn't allow that for ad hoc committees. I'm not sure it allows a staff member either. Maybe you can just for now put down sheriff TBD. I'll advise on that issue. I can check back in with Matt on that if that's what he prefers, and we'll work out a sheriff's representative that's appropriate with the ad hoc requirements of the Brown Act.
Sounds good.
Chief
Anyone?
Rudnick, I would like to volunteer.
Okay. So there are 4, and then we can check with Chief Miller and see if he wants to be on it with Jonathan's recommendation.
I think I know the answer.
I have a feeling I know the answer too, but yes.
And Eric, just real quick, or Lupita, I'm not sure who's controlling this, but I think Karen got dropped off and now she's in the participant and needs to be added back into the panelists.
Okay, I just fixed that. Sorry, Karen.
I'm here.
She's back. Okay, anybody else going once, going twice? All right, then. Phil, I'm assuming we need an official vote on this and a motion and all that good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Then I guess Supervisor Taylor, do you have?
I have a question, Dan, and it's is the motion going to be that Well, do we have to wait till the next meeting of the CCP to designate the members of this ad hoc, or can that be somehow accomplished with the motion today, even though there's some uncertainty?
This was agendized, right? This is part of the agendized item to create the ad hoc. Yeah, so we can actually do this today. And as I said, for sheriff, at least we would just put sheriff's TBD in terms of the designee.
Okay. And then if Chief Miller declines, would someone else step in as the alternate or the other to fill that spot? Does that have to wait until the next time?
I would imagine he just wouldn't be on it. We don't need him as, we don't need him, another member, right? We can have a functional ad hoc without that spot being filled. Yeah, so it's Chief Miller if he agrees.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion or, or I can make the motion. The motion would be to form an ad hoc. Sounds like the motion would be for a 3-month time period, which we could extend if need be, obviously, through an official meeting. The members would be someone from the Sheriff's Department to be determined at this point, probation, Karen, Laura, and Chief Miller, should he accept. Does that sound correct? So I guess I just made the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Tracy. Lapita, can we get a vote, please?
Can I just clarify real quick? Sorry, I think do we want to put Karen or myself for HHSA, and then Karen and I can figure it out?
Phil, is that acceptable, or do we have to designate the specific person?
Well, it's just one of the two of you. Is it a matter of one of you will be the alternate, the other will be the primary, or you're just saying one of you two will be the member?
I think plan is one of the two of us will be the member.
So
The only, I think you have a problem that you can only have 3 of the 7 on the executive committee. So if it's going to be Dan, Karen, let's say Matt's doing it, and
You're right.
so yeah, I thought we had 4.
Did that take us to 4?
It did. Well, Chief Miller would take us to 4, so we'll have
Okay.
to give him a pass on this one.
Yeah, you can just take him off. I mean, if you want, if it's easier. I mean, I don't want to make things complicated.
Okay, then Sheriff's Department to be determined, probation, me, Karen or Ian, depending on the route we go, and then Laura.
Second.
That's the motion, and then a 3-month time period for right now. Second, first by me, second by Tracy. Lapita, can we get a vote, please?
Member Evans?
Aye.
Member Davis?
Aye.
Member Larson?
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Miller is absent. Member Nigel?
Aye.
Member Olson?
Aye.
Member Raven?
Aye.
Member Saylor?
Aye.
Member Valdez?
Aye.
Member Vega is absent, and Member Prudnick.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Which brings us to agenda item number 10. Consider future day reporting center contracting. And this will be with Eric.
3 for 3. So good afternoon once again. Eric Will, CCP analyst. For any new folks joining us on the meeting, I have just a brief update and seeking feedback from the membership of this body regarding the DRC contract. So I just have a brief update on this process and a historical background for the group, and then a couple of options that staff has put together in terms of this process. So for the DRC, the Sacramento County Office of Education, or SCOE, was originally awarded the contract for curriculum and programming to be provided at the Day Reporting Center in December of 2012. SCOE was awarded the contract following a competitive bid process in which 5 submissions were received and reviewed by a panel which included representatives from probation, ADMH, PD, sheriff, WPD, and courts. So a representative panel initially reviewed this competitive bid process. The term of this contract was for services through June 30th of 2014. The contract was amended in April of 2014 to extend services through June 30th, 2016. The contract was further amended in June of 2016 to extend the contract for an additional year. In 2017, the County Administrator's Office recommended waiving on the competitive selection process and to award a 5-year day reporting contract to SCOE. The board approved this request on June 27th of 2017. So per that staff report at that time, this decision was due to the benefits the county receives through the funding partnership with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCR, which allows the county to attain comparable DRC, day reporting center outcomes at a significantly lower cost. So the contract would then be ending on June 30th of 2022 after a 5-year period. So at this time, the probation department has been informed that SCOE and CDCR are working toward a new contract for continued services. If approved, this could continue to benefit the county just as it has over the last several years. But at this time, staff is bringing forth several options for the CCP's consideration at this time. So there are 3 options that staff has put together thus far. Obviously, these would be open to the CCP for discussion and any additional concepts that CCP membership might be interested in. So at this time, one of the options would be a 1-year extension. This would allow SCOE and CDCR to complete their contracting for the West Sacramento Day Reporting Center without interruption to services. Another option would be to do another 5-year contract renewal. So this has been advised by the Department of Financial Services procurement manager that the county would be able to contract with SCOE as another government agency freely, in the sense that this would be work between 2 government agencies. The procurement manager at this time recommends the CCP prepare a sole source to document the reasons why we would continue with SCOE if the CCP chooses to go in this direction. So this would be in alignment with DFS policies for the county. And then finally, staff has one final, not recommendation necessarily, but an option at this time, which would be to form another CCP ad hoc to develop a new request for proposals, or RFP, for solicitation for this process. So going back through this competitive bidding process in which we would go back out to the market for these services. So at this time, these are the 3 options that staff is laying out to the CCP. And this option, or this item, doesn't necessarily need an action at this time, but we are seeking feedback from the CCP members. So that concludes my brief presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions about this item.
I don't have any questions, but I think it just needs to be made clear that we pay for 1 DRC location and we get 2 because of the CDCR relationship between CDCR and SCOE. That's not a relationship between Yolo County and CDCR. That's a relationship between SCOE and CDCR. So why we did the 5-year contract before is we recognized that we would never get a 50% off deal, probably by going through an RFP process, which is what we have right now. So I know you kind of said that. I just said it blunter. Yeah.
Others?
Well, Dan, I think if there is not a re-procurement, and I'm not suggesting that there should be a formal assessment that of what has taken place. That's a normal process for contracting with any entity. So kind of a review of the purpose and scope and financing and et cetera, and just do a conscious assessment of the situation and come to the conclusion that at this point, the public interest is to continue the current contract arrangement if Tracy's perspective bears out.
My understanding is SCOE has not officially secured the CDCR contract yet, but I know it's in the works. And so I'm not sure how that might bear out as well. Additionally, it has been a little bit of a time since we've had an official report out and presentation from the Day Reporting Center. So one of my thoughts is that we have a special meeting in November, December or so, and have the one agenda item would be presentation by SCOE on the Day Reporting Center. And we could do kind of a full look at things at that point. I'm just throwing that out there for thought process.
Yeah, I think that's probably wise. I think that things get cozy after 7 or 8 years. It's kind of good to take a look and see, make sure that everything's is still going the way you think it is. And I think those of you who work with this program, with these folks most closely, have a much better sense. But I think over time, for public accountability, you want to do something that's more concrete. And there may also be other changes in the ecosystem where we may have entities that didn't bid on the thing the first time around for some reason might be in a better position to do it this time. So you got to, I think, take an objective look at it, which is what you're doing, and I appreciate that.
Mark?
Yeah, I was just going to give some information. I know the director of adult reentry, Chris Allen, is also on the phone, or on the line, or on the Zoom call, or however it is. But we've been contracting with CDCR since 2008. We've always had 3-year contracts that updated. And in 2017, we signed another 5-year agreement with them. I know that we are in contract process with them right now. And as everything looks like it's looking like another 5-year extension is going to happen, we hope to secure that within the next few months. But right now we're in the process with CDCR because we're in the same terms. Our contract is ending in June of 2022.
Others? I'll not seeing any. I'll open it up to public comment.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you, Lupita. I know November's busy with a lot of time off and that sort of thing, but is the membership available for a special meeting? And I don't know if we'd want to keep it at our normal Monday and time, if that works for others.
Would that be November 8th?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other major conflicts for anybody on that date and time?
Works on mine.
All right, then let's set it for November 8th at 1:30. Mark, I'm hoping it's available for your team because that's when we set it at.
Yep, I'm like Chris Allen will be there, I'm sure, ready to go. We'll make sure of it.
Perfect. And then we'll figure out as a body how to proceed at a later date. Perfect. Which brings us to number 11, adjournment. Unless anyone argues that we should keep going, we'll call the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.